Ik Yuxatini, Iltakat Johan. Yachana Hatuasagu, Lingít sheex'í, Adatiuch Agachtilaati, Yegaqwati. Tlaidihina Wakechne, Echat Yausaka, Iltakat Lingít Shagun Aya, Ushachish, Katiniki, Ya just ha at sheex'í teen. At away yata away kakwa ak, in kachwanig. Gwalli seku away chag, honach, klagu away chag. Atlein kuu away. Ya ka ye haswutien, ya Lingít chusiti a. Anani sawe ko an wullako. An wullako away. Gwallidzi kajich away wuti wega. Ach shashakich aya ye haskua u. Ya ach shagun, ya Lingít yan nach. Shashakich ye haswutien. Talkanach kusha you do a sak. Ajoe talkwe di you had to sagan. Ya ye det ko arshukach adi kakach adi. Ach dakte haswutagasan. Ajoe hasawas kuan. Ya konachawe, yeltakat Lingítani wutleid. Ye awacho ach, yeltakat has adusa shashakike has kuo u. Ku o akutzati, te, atlein te o aka. Akach awe katuchagan. Aka awe an, hasakawa duch hastu yagu, shashakike. Oe konachawe aye wutien. Ya yedat ach cha Yesu shashakike ati. Ye awe cho ach gwalchas chaye genki aju denuk cho awe chaku dachtiki. Kadanjach duchsati. Wasa tlagu at. Ye awe gwalchwe gao. Kleshaw de he nawe chaku nachsati. Qanach teidi aye wutien. Qanach adi aye wutien gwalliwe. Nanya ai gwalli wutien yu. Qawe dakte awe haswu art dakte. Ajawe Lingítani aya shawtlekid. Ye awa och aya gwalli ye shukha aya hetasawa shechen. De shu heti do sak qa awe de shitan qutsa tiwe ga. Ye awe achtsu aye wutien. We dak tleo awe. Och aya gwall hasful sa aqa asaya qutsati dakloidi. Kun tak sawe aye haswutien dakka. Qne asti twas guil ka hasawastini. Gall hasawasku. Gall hasawsaku. Ya hasu shagun ka ye haswutien. Ya stakhin yidu asak ya hin klein. Ach ayach awe hasawul gasen. Aqa awe hasawsatin ya sit klein. Ye hasawajien. Kesh ade aqanach unqaatin ye. Yaltakatuhan. Ach gwalqani yandishani Qayis at Shidzi away sit Kanach Wukudi. Kawahate Shansa. Achawe Adatu has out Atkin. Dachnach Sha away. Awat Sech like Kuwat Sech Awasti. Yéil you has to a sock. Yes, Yawaqa, Uhanaya had to was a sit Tayide Haushahashi. Quashana Saya Gahitlayeh Akade owe sit Tayide Haguklahash. Kanahoe Kashisikwa at Quashatusakuch Ak, Teshatua Ushku. Kawahit Shani at Ade Ayahaswu Adi. Yashawat Lingít. Ka'a helwasa kwati. Kleina ko'a qone yendishan. Kelsu aya adatki agurlayech. Kek adatki yekaqo'u. Ka chaguta kel ade adatki yen qo'u ya. Achawe yes ya ka helwasa kwati. Kwashi tu litsini tu agesiku atai sit tayihi lahashi. Khanas ayahas outlier. Or atshi ayahas a kaushashi ayah you. Ye awe khoach has to awe a kautlahid. Heshas awasku was at kakone. Ye sit tayi ayah yikuklahash. Ye awe ye yadis kayan. Sheyi ishaduch ishada ayah kakachtuduch. Kwash Kanachoy kakao jakitawi sit tayi. Kwash yende ye duzani awe we sheyi. Yende yanas Kleshatoa ashko you would jaki. Aka awe yata hasakau leshi, atasakau leshi. We iya he. We iya he. Iya he. Iya he. Iya he. Yahweh, 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 Yahweh. Iyahe Khanasawe atayi khasfulahash Kashyuk atankaya we atshitin Kainaka we yasatki Ye awe hashakaw Like haskoyawa ka Sit kanakaya kukki shir Haster iqa aya kukki teas Ye awe hashakawa ja Gwashi dark sit tayihi lahashi. Klein awe shoot it the ak you. Kaya gartus satin. Aka uhansu. Khanas kach sit tayide. Hagach lahash. Ye awe sit kanachaya ushik we kleinacha. Hasayawa dlak. Kati awe hasayawa dlak. Shoot out the akre gun plane. Kanachawes kinde awe akausaha. Aka awe ausatin aka. Kuchte awe taujihich aya. Hasayawa dlak ke uwe. Khana saya kone hasawa shekhen. Akach. Akho. Kwash ashu wuku. Yes yawa ka. Hasawe aya wadlaq sit tayikh aya haswul hashi uhan qoa tashatuwa oshko dachawe acha kautut lechait Gwastakte gachtu art aya yekagachtu u Igoach Jawe aye haswatian dakloidi de shitan dakte ye hasku u chag dak Gwashiwe aya wushtach aya hasyaw sidak koa dakloidi kayan yedi Chidechi hasuahain ya atshi idech aya yakchi has au saku Hasayawadlaqi Jawe yata has atakaushishi wega Chidechi dakloidi kayan yedi aye Hey, hey, aha, ahi, aha, hey, ha. 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 Da gai shatak wede yake he ha. Da gai shatak wede yake he ha. Hey hey aha ahi aha he ha. Hey hey aha ahi aha he ha. Ayach gai shatzak wede yake he ha. Ayach gai shatzak wede yake he ha. Hey hey aha ahi aha he ha. Hey hey aha ahi aha he ha. Kashtakatawe Khwashi Yahasu Chiki. Ye away quash Shukwa Aya yet the tune. Hey hey yaha ah he ya ha hey ha Dakundi hin away. Ye away at Gachtu she Aka away Shukwa Achu ye. Dark guy Shatsak way de yag. Dachtehin awes the kata dachundehin away yet take we achi jishukuni tu a ka awet su yet the tune dach a koa which uye ayach kai shatzak we de yake ha wait at su dachtehin a katlai hoot one panins ye away shinket achi Cleich, deich, cleich, nask, hooch. Ye awe shukar chuchs, ka acho arling gita chichi. Gwynes chishach eti sa achi, jadu sa de tuasagu e atshi. Hayate awe keishi, kaka kwati yuhan. Gwynes chish yit koaha, achigal. Gwaltis yuchatan, gwal gashi.
Tukanei atchi codly itchy kuchayanaha. Ja ade hat ne u ach atchi klech tua ushku. Codly Codly itchy kuchayanaha. Dasauk sheach isati. Lingít ani kachna lech. Nuk yachas tu illichat. Codly itchy kuchayanaha. Dasauk sheach isati. Hoot.
Yak Yak echa way, goodness cheese. Adu satsu. Yisukuga or atshe. Adapasa.
Clefchi, clefchi, achchi.
One qanins tlekwa shi qutziti. Tleko yidu asako atsu. Masa. Hagus Kesani iyaha. Til ahech uwakaka. Wa kwa iyataka. Hina hina Hagus Kesani Til ahech uwakaka. Wa kwa iyatak. Ya awa qash at qitahawe hachiyeti. Chakuta tsiqatsati. With lekwashi. Ya awa you do a sock at your way. Kleku you do a sock. Kwashyata yach tukane aya. Dudich hakikitleku. At your way tlekwashi aya. Kayata tsu. How tlesh ek how de ke. Tlekwa. Ya awa tleku. One qanins. Good cheese.
Sing one from this past week that the kids have been singing. George Holly. It's wasa it do a sock. Wasa it do a sock. Hune you do a sock. Wee wee. Hune you do a sock. Wasa you do a sock.
That's more at my level. I love it.
So we do that one with the kids a lot too. So like there'll be one singer, and then they'll point at someone, and so they'll know, like a little kid, and they get all big eyes. Wasa it do a sock. Wasa it do a sock. And they'll wait for the kid, and the kid will go, Kaja, Kaja, you do a sock. Wee, Kaja, you do a sock. And so sometimes they'll send it all around the circles that folks have it. And sometimes you point, at people, and you never know who they're gonna, point to. So yeah, really fun rhythms, fun stuff. Yeah, and then lots of like this is a big thing in Lingít, especially it's just for me it's like a signaling joy. And there's this thing called sheex'í. So that's it's a complicated term. But so there's a couple parts to it. So if we've been doing this grammar stuff for a while. So sheex'í. So it's a verb. So you can see sh, which is the end of something. You can see the ka in there, it gets contracted. See the classifier, sha. Chuch is to summon or to beckon. And then that S apostrophe is to do something in a series. So this is what they call, in English they call them love songs. So these songs will always contain you'll hear yetki in there, right? So they'll say, Shukach adi yetki, hey, right? And so that you'll just hear something. And so what you're expected to do is listen, or you'll know the song. And when they say that part, if that's your father's clan, then you're supposed to really get up and woohoo! You're supposed to really just give it and show joy to your father's people. And so those ones typically follow a formula too. So the what we call usually the vocables or yadachun and Lingít establish the rhythm and the melody of the song, right? So you're gonna hear it. Sometimes it'll repeat itself and then it'll kick in. So it'll do it like once, then it'll really kick in. Then you'll get to verse 1, and then it does the vocables all the way through. There's usually a whole pattern. Then it's going to do that exact same pattern, but you're going to put words in for the first section. And then that's called like your verse, usually verse 1. And usually the song caller is saying, Yéil. And then you'll sing that one twice in a row, right? So whatever the thing is, you do it twice in a row. So, do ya kana gudi huwa aha, shahe yati yeli huwa aha, chayash kana squat do ya nagudi de guji yana de huwa aha. Then you do that again. Do ya kana gudi huwa aha. And a lot of times you get a song caller who's like calling it out right at the end, right at the beginning, right? So everybody knows what's coming, but everybody should kind of know. And then you go back to the vocables again. Aha, ahuwa, hey, huwa, aha. Right? So it's got this set. Then you get into verse 2, 2 times in a row. Then that's usually a rap, right? So then you're going to get to the second line. Do akabutqaini huwa, aha. Shahe yati yéil huwa, aha. Ashet kadnas ach yech duwa qisani de quji yana de huwa aha. And so you're going to get these certain patterns in there. And they're called sheex'í because you're going to summon. It's a neat word. It's a word that requires a little bit of examination. So we're working on the Raven stories. And whenever he sort of wants something, he turns it into a bit of a song. So he'd say, Qajak she katkat qaqaskid. Qajak she katkat qaqaskid de. Let me land on Qaja. Every time I sing, the camera looks at the TV. I don't know what's going on. Wasa. We call it the Qatu Sorong. We're still learning how to use it, because I am. So when we're working on that, Shikshani March Detson, she said, Raven has started to sheex'í. I was like, oh, okay. Is that what you say when he starts singing like that and talking like that? She said, yeah. So then, not long after that, I ran into Kingisti. We're going to a language gathering in Fairbanks. He was eating breakfast, so I joined him. And I said, hey, what do you think of this word? Sheex'í. And he got really excited. Something's just got him really excited. He says, that's calling the end back to the beginning. So that's how the word works. It's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But then the reason why, so that sheex'í. So like if we were up there and we sang a song, like let's say there was some big pu'ir, and the sheex'í are there, and the qanachtidi are there, and the kagwantan are there, and the dakrawidi are there. So once we got up and sang our song, if we hit that song where we called out, usually in verse 1, you'd hear us say, sheex'í. So the children of the sheex'í. So all those people whose dads are sheex'í. And I glare at my kids like, you better dance for your father. And then the second line will usually call out, qanachtidi. So you compose them like that because you folks live in the same community. You're going to have a lot of the same relatives. And so you're going to compose these songs together, and then both of you have rights to use the songs a long time ago. So now that they've danced for us and they've been called out, now they're going to kick one. So the Kagwantan will fire one up, and you'll hear Kagwantan Yatki, and then we'll jump over, woohoo, and just really dance for them at that part. And it's a lot of joy going on, and those tend to follow that same pattern. Establish the song, then the melody stays the same, but then you insert the words, verse 1 twice, verse 2 twice. But the key with these songs is a lot of them are kind of sad. Like, let me look at you one last time before I die, or I thought I was dying, or there's usually some kind of sorrowful element to them. And then there's another thing where there's one that goes, ach tu wasagu, oh, aha, aha, aha. All right, I'm losing the rhythm on it. But it says, ach tu wasagudnuch, yi ani kagudi, which is interesting because there's not a, I would expect ach tu wasagudnuch, yi ani chwagudi, like chwagudi instead of kagudi. So sometimes the grammar does these really interesting things where you have these verb modes which you wouldn't really use outside of songs a whole lot unless you're really super fancy Lingít speakers. So usually it's not just straightforward sort of stuff. There's often a metaphor, there's often like some complicated verb mode that's in there. And even like duya kanagudi, his walking along, shahe yadi Yéil, this child raven, duyash kanashkwatlyech, that place where he's rolling himself along, diquji yanade, over towards his wolf. And then, and so you get these kind of really, conceptually, they tend to get really interesting like that, which is why it's fun to study. And then some of them just have vocables. There's no words to them. But then maybe there's some powerful story attached. We went to one community and they had taken a song and they just decided to put words to it. And we were trying to figure out whether we should talk about it because we knew the history. That song came from an icht. And so it's probably not anybody's place to put words to it. So, but then there's other things too. Like there's this one song that I was hearing in Klukwan and in Wrangell and in Heidelberg. And it goes kind of like, ah hey, yahoo, ahoo, ahoo, hey, yahoo, ahoo, ahoo, hey, hey, ahee, yahoo, hoo, hey, hey, yahoo, ahoo, ahoo, hey, and it repeats, right? Like it's a Heidelberg entrance song. Yeah, you hear it in Sanya Kwan. So I was thinking, I was like, what? I hear this song all over the place. Slight differences here and there. Cluck one, they put words to it, And then this Gwich'in elder came to spend some time with us, and he just out of the blue told us, he's like, yeah, well, I don't know, maybe 1,000 years ago, this Gwich'in guy decided to go for a walk, and he went way down to this part, and he left a song and hung out with people, and went over here and left that same song, and hung out with people, and over here and over. Was just traveling all over, and then came home and told the people all about it. Then he sang that same song for us. I was like, whoa. So there's a lot of trade. Some songs are owned, and they shouldn't be sung without permission from the clan. There's a lot of them. Some of them are cry songs. They shouldn't be just sung for any old thing. They're used to help with the dealing with grief and removing grief. And then some of them are just fun jams. There's a bunch of trade songs we brought back from Naaw country that are just fun. And then some of them too, there's no distinctive end. You could just keep it rolling until everybody's tired. Thoughts, questions, ideas, feedback?
So this is the pattern I have. So vocables, the song color says like the vocables for like his, I'm looking at the Ki Yana Gwain from the sheex'í, and it's kind of seeing that like set up there. And it's like the vocables twice because there's two different vocables used. And that's just the song color. And then the dance group would go in and do the vocables twice, the verse one twice, the vocables once and then verse 2 twice and then repeat again? Or is there vocables on the end there?
So songs that are entrance songs and songs that are exit songs, usually they just like, you could sing them till eternity. Like you could just keep, like if the jam is going, keep it going, right? And so then they have a pattern where that one's, I think it goes vocable verse 1, vocable verse 2, vocable verse 1, and it just goes until everybody runs out of time or energy. Or everybody's entered, and then the song caller usually they'll yell like "hoocha," and then everybody does it one more time, you know. So, but then the other sort of structured songs like the Duckloidy Second Canoe Song, or a whole bunch of, there's some cry songs that are built like this, the Shukachus, the love songs, they usually go vocable, verse 1, verse 1, vocable, verse 2, ending. Like very specific in terms of how they should be structured. And so you got to know what kind of song. And then there's more complicated ones than that. There's ones that have 4, 5, 6 verses. There's also what we call sheex'í, and then there's hat songs, and those are kind of similar in structure, and those ones tend to get sometimes a little more free flowing, and then you get very complex patterns, and those are for dancing with a sheex'í or a hat behind the blanket. And a long time ago, they would have a blanket, and then I think they usually gave the blanket away. But the pattern, a very common pattern, goes vocable, verse 1, verse 1, vocable, verse 2, verse 2. And that's hooch. But that's a very common, and especially for those love songs, those tend to work like that. The lullabies, they have usually just a pretty simple, short one off. It's just a one through. So, you know, ha, goose, but then you could sing them as many times as you want. So usually a dance group will establish it, or they'll have a set. And then there's others, like we have one we call the Chilkoot series, where it's like there's a whole series of songs and you sing them in a row, and it's a medley because you go right from one song to the next one to the next one. And then, you know, it's sort of like, and as a group, you got to kind of get yourself geared up because, like, okay, here comes 5 songs in a row, you know, and sometimes, you know, especially if like there's some big event going on, like we had a house dedication, and there weren't very many dancers, and so we had to dance for hours, or sometimes at pu'ik as well. And then another thing you'll see is there's certain songs that tend to work really well for fun time at pu'ik, which is, you know, it can't be too sacred of a song because people are going to come out wearing silly hats or costumes, or because they're just trying to entertain, get people laughing and having fun, because you're trying to, the sort of emotional trajectory of a pu'ik. So everybody gathers, the atu gets brought out, we dress our opposites, and then usually there's some sort of opening prayer or line. Then there's the clan that's in mourning will put black on their faces, or their opposites might. Then they stand up and people do their cry songs, and sort of, in a lot of folks' minds, they're saying like, okay, here's my last big chance to cry for, you know, I can always be in grief and sad, but I'm supposed to really start moving through a process after this. And so it can be really intense. And so you'll sing, and then that requires the other clan to sing. However many are sung, it's we want it balanced out. So then there'll be a release of grief, which will come out, and there's the hook is the verb, and so there's a chant that they use with the staff. There's usually 4 people, and they do it 4 times, and And then usually you shift directions every time, so you've gone all 4 directions with all 4 people. And now the grief has been released, and then either before or after that, usually there's one person who's been chosen to give the speech for the release of grief. Should be in Lingít. It's not all the time anymore. And then you start bringing out the food and the dish you're gonna use for your ancestors, and then but you got to make sure that like it spins around to joy after that, which takes a lot of energy and effort. Sheesh. Other thoughts?
I put together for that sheex'í, it was from the De Laguna and I think Johnston. I'll put it in the chat because I want to make sure it's accurate. But I just found this beautiful quote from the De Laguna that I want to add to this web page that I just wanted to read, because as somebody who's coming from a Eurocentric, classically trained, it was just so good as a music teacher to hear it. It was Agi Jambor made the following observations on the songs. It's almost paradoxical to try to transcribe Aboriginal Indian music in Western musical notation, as if we would explain a pear by means of an apple. Minnie Johnson expressed it so beautifully on one of her tapes. Nobody taught me this song. It lived in my heart. Our feelings have finer shadings than the 12 notes of a scale or the musical forms that we have to follow in our compositions. And when she explained the reason for composing her children's songs, she said, I compose them to make my grandchildren happy. It is a laughing music. How can we put this down, these infinite shadings of the human soul, with our musical notations? When singing these songs, we should always see behind the 5 lines and little black dots Minnie Johnson, who didn't learn her songs. They lived in her heart.
Okay. Just cheese. Yeah, and like certain clan, like if we go back a long time ago, every clan probably had like their group of song keepers who could just bust out jam after jam and just go with, and if you had to go all night, you went all night without repeating the same song. And sheex'í, one thing I said when I was telling that story earlier was sheex'í was the one who said you could tell the entire Tlingit history through our songs if you know them. And so it's really wild to just sort of see and to try and like grasp the depth of some of these in terms of like when these songs are made and what they're for and when we sing them. There's maybe I'll find it for you folks. We'll do it when we start to wind down this part of the discussion, because there's a fun one that belongs to the sheex'í that I think is worth checking out.
Is there any resources out there that you would recommend for figuring out like vocable like patterns? Because that's what I struggle with. I can like throw together some language and kind of make a nice beat to it, but it's like the vocables part. And I see in the hashi hook that the vocables are spelled like for if it's like HA/A//, is that like ha? Like
Yeah, usually.
double
Well, so you got like hey, ha, way, ya. Like those are some of the main sort of sound. Like so if you think of these songs, like hey, hey, ya, ha, ah, he, ya, ha, hey, ha. So like you can just sort of write out what the sounds are in there, and usually you're going to get an H or a Y or a W, followed by the double A, the EI, or the EE. Those are probably the most common. It'd be interesting to sort of look at some of that stuff, because then aha, ahuwa, he, Hua, aha. So you do have a double O in there, right? To sort of look at what the, but it's kind of like you're going to use these three consonants and these four vowels and mush them up. See what, and it's really interesting to see all the things that come up. And then what the drum does with the beat is interesting as well. There's another one. We oh ha ya we oh hi we oh ha ya we oh hi na we oh ha ya we oh hi na we oh ha ya we oh hi na we oh ha ya hey ya hoo hi na we oh ha ya who ayow honey yeah, and then it repeats. And when you get into the words of that one's fun. And some of them are supposed to be done pretty fast, and you're supposed to spin on certain parts of them, usually the beginning and the end. Like so, the drum beat for some of those, like at the beginning, you'd usually be going we oh hi ya we oh hi na we oh hi ya. And so, like, really hitting and then the dancers need to really know where those stops are so they could, because they're supposed to do like certain, usually a step left, step right. Sometimes you go, whee, and so, and those things aren't particularly random. They're pretty like choreographed, and same with the types of dancing. And sometimes you have, we're in the sheex'í and sort of doing maybe it's theatrical, maybe it's real, but if you're doing like a dance competition, then, you want to make sure, because sometimes they're doing it really amazingly, and they're very low. Their knees are usually very close to the ground, and they're coming at each other, and then their heads go boom, boom. But you got to make sure you don't go the same. You don't want to smash into each other. But it's all about, like, the first step goes left, and so making sure some of those things are clear, and then the dancing, like, whole bunch of principles to that in terms of both male and female and what's expected, and in terms of what your body should be doing, how low you should be. Your legs generally don't go spread open, so you also need to be low knees, but also being careful not to sort of be in certain bodily positions. And then, and then just going, going, going. And so it would be fun to sort of look at that and to do some song workshops, which might work better in a sort of more closed environment. But we can certainly talk about that.
Yeah, because maybe that could be an opportunity to work with Yéil and his class. Because I know he just started to teach a really cool class as well on campus. Well, I think he's doing it virtual right now, but I think it's eventually going to in person. So
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Okay. Where? I think it's this one. Okay, we'll try something before our break, just to sort of keep thinking about music. So here's a bit of a short shkashnik adif qanachu. Keep in mind, Raven lived in Dry Bay. That's most of the stories take place in Dry Bay. There's the only one that I'm for sure doesn't took place out on Hazy Islands, so way out. Dekinu is what it's called. Qunnachu is our name for Dry Bay. It's among the Dene people. Okay. Hopefully I got the right audio file too. This is probably one of the most modern Raven stories. Let me get rid of that and make this bigger. And this is told by Yéil and is recorded by De Laguna. Oh, I gotta make sure I'm sharing my audio. Plum. Okay, here we go.
I'll hold it here when you're talking. Then when you start to sing, we can put it down there. That's a good idea.
Shukr na kaya takat at saksi kaya kustanin akak kaos aya itat ayo tat kaya sa kautlisi yun kaan shukr ye te Yéil ayo akaya te ikaratu tlitsis anu shiskunagi Tehitayo ogiye te Yéil. So teyo ka katit kausliyah akayo tukata'a. Ayite ikate de anakoch. Yo nu sisku de yiktach andago. You kopten ya oka. We take kastach kaisa'in. Naaw. Tukrete. Aya ite tiexik te khaqi tunak ki ultin. Tiqa tegante anakhoch. Ayit tutuj kaushikan. Ayu ya osaka. Chawak tekhlak sate. Jose kukai kao. Ayu teksate. Tletekhusate. Hasta ukhaat. Tsia kihtak kaute Tak ayu tsuyu kapten ya waka. Tsuyine akitlaga yak. Tsuyine akautatliga. Tsuyikta awaat. Tsuyak audate inwa kast. Tukhonte. Tiqana khana wakok kitena qaa. Tataqa tletwasawud. Tletaqos taqotatsikut. Kitena atukaqati tikata'a. Chatuqaqo naskautu tiltek. Atahudu wata. Kawikuqa. Tuchitu tutsiin. Audina. Kitena audina. Takha. Takoda. Deskuta katote aya kada sukyu kast. Tutet qayu kushit. Chacha kletsuq yu kast takat kletsuq. Aqauta khnuyedes tutinuk. Tuqustos qalqas. Helqa tushi chaqachat. Chaytu qus. Yus qalqas. Aya. Atat khaya kautlisi. Akak khaus atuat. Chako hasikun sheex'í kautiga.
Yeah, English.
Ayasi. Aya ket qashi ayate.
I don't know what's
Takatat qushtuye khaqati yeska washu khalas tatak antakatu quchichu qaqwan yaqiye khayam ayam au ayam ayam Takatat qushtuye khaqati yeska Shukan Khatiya Matri Khani It Katsek Titanita Tayam Who did know yet got way down the Hudson Sitania into who Khatia and Khate it got sick Titanita Tayam
What do you do? Those boats with the oars sticking out that turn to stone are still there in Qadnachu. You can see them. And there's pretty fun, there's really fun language in that one. I think every Lingít class, oops, is this not the right one? Hold on. Must have had two of them open. Hold on. Not that one. But every Lingít class, I think, has studied this story. They just, every group runs into the same group of stories, same songs, same drills. Pretty funny parts to say. Well, one, Kawus'a was a very important composer of Lingít songs. And so sheex'í is to compose songs. And then, or sheex'í. And so Kawus'a also composed that one that goes, Duya kana gudi huwa aha, shahiyati Yéil huwa aha. Pretty, yeah, so Raven did live in a rock house. So you get that tehit ayu ayiyeti. So rock house over there, it is over there inside of a house. They are Raven. So te ayu kaya kajet autleyech. So this autleyech verb means to make something. So if you said kaya kajet autleyech, they made a chair. What this underline X as a suffix does is to say to use something as that thing or to make it into a thing. So in this case, te, a rock, kaya kajet autleyech, used a rock for a chair. So you can substitute nouns for that. So I could say, achtichi shalch. I use my shoe for a spoon, which I wouldn't recommend, but grammatically, you could sort of do something like that. But just to show what's going on with there. And then the next sentence references back to this rock, te'aka ayutukada'a, which is just kind of a funny way to say sitting because you have a tuk and a built into the verb. But a long time ago, that's things that people used to say. And so, and then they tried to bring him some whiskey, and he turned the first group into stone because he didn't like people coming to his house. And he says, teich nachsati, which is a hortative verb. Let it, whatever that is over there, let it be stone. Okay, take 5. Hey, Jim, come back and we'll do something different. Okay, so a couple other things I was thinking about with songs is some songs have a call and response type of structure. So you have a song leader, for example, and they'll yell out, they'll really sort of belt out the first part. And sometimes it's a back and forth, right? So there might be the song leader will sing this and everybody else sings this. Sometimes the song leader will take a lead and then everybody follows in. For example, there's a song composed from the words of Kitchener, George Davis, composed by sheex'í, Harold Jacobs. It goes, Su he de shugach tutana. That's the opening part. The drum comes in, everybody goes, Su he de shugach tutan ya kuske dake da jika nak haskau de keet. Hey, 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 hey. Then you got two times. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. And two times like this. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. Repeats. Great entrance or exit song because you could do it till the sun burns out to its core if you wanted to. And so that's another sort of structure. Lots and lots of different songs, and also songs that were traded, acquired, some they have long histories behind them. There's that one that goes, oh, how's it go? Yahweh, Yahweh, who, hey. No, not that one, not that one. What one am I thinking?
I'd say that was the exit song. Who, hey,
Yeah,
hey, hey,
that's a
who.
Chukanade exit song. That one came from a medicine person. Goes, hoo ha, Yahweh, hoo ha, Yahweh. Right, and then I think once the group starts doing the third one, halfway through, the song caller should go, Yahweh, Yahweh. Then everybody jumps in, Yahweh, and then it goes through that whole thing, then comes back to the hoo ha. And that's a Tsimshian song that was traded to Lingít peoples, especially out of Angoon. And so it's good to sort of know these histories of these songs. And also, Daklawadi over here might sing different songs than Daklawadi over here, and Deshitan and Qanachtidi. But then, as sort of like generally what we're talking about in our art class today, with everything that happened with oppressing our peoples and just the levels of outlawing culture and language and dancing and ceremony, I think you just got less and less knowledge generally of songs among people. So it would be good to sort of get more groups together that are sharing these histories, sharing these songs, practicing them, and that we have opportunities to sing them to each other outside of Ku'ik, which I think there should still be Ku'ik and there should still be stuff that happens there, and celebration that should still go on, but then there should be other things as well, just opportunities to practice, sing to each other, and do more stuff like that so it becomes a regular part of our lives.
I was trying to remember how we were called out. What was your time to solo? Kai Taki, Chukchi, Hukchi, Weshitake. I can't remember exactly how you say it. Similar to that. Then it's your time to go up there.
Oh, yeah, they might say Doc might be in it to go out up in front, like you gotta emerge out of the woods. Doc G. Ha Wakshiyik is another important concept before the eyes of the people. Okay. Any other thoughts on songs and composition?
Did you talk about the sway song?
No, can you tell us?
No, I don't know too
So-
much about it. I just know that it's used for mourning, and a lot of times the women that do the dance, you know, they have a very special method that they have to use. So,
Yeah, well, I've seen it done. Sometimes they would do it as well at a house dedication. So they would have women who stand up and they wear and these very long earrings, and then they got to get them to sway while the song is going, and that's called yukanak. And there's specific songs that they use for that. I don't know any of them. Yeah. And usually most clans have like their jukebox. Like we had Johnny Marks and Nora, and they could just sit there all night, it seems like, and just keep going with the song.
yeah, I used to see the women wear a skein of yarn hanging from each side of their head to do this way song. That was all very, usually very well done.
Okay.
3012.
Goodness, sheesh.
Yeah.
It's 9012.
I thought maybe they had a picture of it.
77.
I guess not.
39.
Okay. Sheesh. All right, so I thought we'd sort of get back into this little readings in Lingít with some slightly different intentions with this go around. So trying to think of some of the things we've been doing with the verbs
He needs to turn
and how to switch the verbs around.
away.
What? Oh.
So can I get somebody to read this slide, and then I'll ask you to translate it as well.
Ant uanuk Yéil slash awadu do tuwa ushka shall do kashi.
Sheesh. Ant uanuk Yéil. Teshawe de towa ushku shaudu chashi. And what do we have for a translation?
The do tuwa ushka, is that like I feel bad or I don't feel good?
Well, you've got do in
Nine.
Oh,
instead of
okay.
and you have tuwa instead of tu.
Like she's bad. She's not good.
Well, the tuwa is different than the tuwu. It's also
Oops.
So that he doesn't want.
Doesn't care.
yeah, doesn't want, doesn't like. It kind of depends on context. So the first sentence is Aunt uwanuk Yéil.
Is aunt something to do with anger?
Yes. Uwanuk.
Mad at his brother?
No, this woman. Aunt uwanuk
Son or
My
Yeah.
son is angry.
son.
Right? So this is Aunt uwanuk. They are angry. Yéil. So here's another fill in the blank thing. You could put any kinship term in here. And you could also change that pronoun. Aunt uwanuk dushat. Aunt uwanuk duchuch. And everybody can get mad, right? Everybody just get mad, right? And you just keep switching them around. We can do other verbs too, right? We're not trying to be mad. Tashlawe du toa ushkusha duchashi. He doesn't want
His haircut.
Doesn't want his haircut. Yeah, away. I'll be mad too. Play.
So in the first sentence, is the verb nook?
Yes. So there are two versions of the nuke verb that this one could be. One of them is to feel something. So this is, you could say, shtutu wanuk, I feel that way. Yetuch wanuk, I felt that way. And to feel something, like I felt it with my hands. Jichtanuk. And so then there's another one, which we usually hear as qanu. And you would have wunuk for that one, to sit down. So this on is anger, and then the T is to arrive at or to touch, and then you have uwanuk. Kingi used to like to say it sounds to him like they're sitting right next to anger. It's like you just pulled up a chair right next to anger. And he used to say that his elders explained it to him like you're choosing to sit there.
Did you put down extra besides the items I bought?
So let's take a look at this tuwa ush gu. We're going to look at it in the positive form, okay? So in this case, we'll do the negative form probably after this. Okay. Ach tuwasagu, ituwasagu, du tuwasagu, ha tuwasagu, yi tuwasagu, hastu tuwasagu, ka tuwasagu. What is the first one? How would I translate the first one? Ach tuwasagu.
I feel good.
It's not feeling. That would be to wo, as opposed to.
I want.
Yeah, I want it. I like it.
You know, this looks a lot like the Spanish gustar, where in Spanish it's not I like it, but it is pleasing to me. And this to me looks like it is pleasing to me.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, because that fits both the want and the like.
Right.
And otherwise, those two verbs in English, they don't have a lot of overlap.
Yeah, right. Well, you got like happiness in there. You got tuwa, which is sort of wanting or intention. Yeah, and I think you have some similar things with Hawaiian as well, where you could say maki maki ao, which is I like it or I want it. So that you can't really differentiate between the two. What about ituwasagu?
You want.
You want it, you like it. Dutuwasagu.
Singular they.
Yeah.
Want it, like it.
They want it, they like it. Hatuwasagu.
We want it.
Yituwasagu.
You all want it.
Hastutuwasagu.
They?
Yeah, or they all, however we want to do that. Hatuwasagu.
People,
Okay. One, a person?
People want it. It is wanted. People like it. It is liked. Could be any one of those. Depends how you want to translate it. So if I want to change these,
Lance,
Huh?
does it, I thought it implied that you can see it and you want it.
Say that again. Sorry.
If tuwasagu is you can see it and you want it.
Yeah, I want it. I like it. right? And so when I was working with Kahwanish and Shakshani, we were translating this book, and the pattern was, I love this. And it was always like, I love sledding. I love ice cream. It was a kid's book. And every time I came at them with, I love it, they'd say, ach tuwasagu. And so that was just what they used for that. Like, I want it, or I like it. So and then you could attach verbs to these as well, right? So you could say, ach tuwasagu chochai. I want to eat it. Ach tuwasagu chosatini. I want to see it. Ach tuwasagu ichsatini. I want to see you. Ach tuwasagu i'in kachwanigi. I want to tell this to you. So you can attach verbs to this. But so we have ach tuwasagu, ituwasagu. So what if I wanted to say, I don't like it, or I don't want it? What has to change?
Would it be tish or tish? Tish, I guess, is Daisleen inland, but tish do or tish achtua ushku. That has to change to a negative. Yeah.
Yes. So a classifier cannot change groups. So this is a whole different verb. It's related, but it's one of these ones where you've got is, isn't, opposite. Yak'e, kesh uk'e, kesh ushke. The first two are the same verb. Yak'e, kesh uk'e. Kesh ushke is the opposite. And there's a few of them that have that. This is one of them. I don't think people would say keshach tua uske. I don't think people would say that. I think this is one where you just go straight to the opposite one. So now we should be able to predict the verb going all the way down, all the way down, all the way down. And this is one where the verb changes outside of the verb itself. And then we could put, in this case, we'll say tish. Oops, we gotta get that. Tish ituwa ushka. Tish dutuwa ushka. Tish hatuwa ushka. Tish yituwa ushka. Where does it go here?
At the beginning.
Tish hastu tuwa ushka. And then tish tuwa ushka. People don't want it, people don't like it. They all don't want it, they all don't like it. So just sort of this ach, du, ha, yi, hastu, ha. Just sort of looking at that pattern as we go through, and then looking at what happens when we push this particular verb negative. Any questions about that? Somebody read this one.
Chataya
Oh.
ach itawe dutlak asichan.
Sheesh, ach yid awe dudlak asechan. How do we translate that one?
This is my son.
Ah,
That is my son. He loves me, or I don't know.
close. You got the love.
Is Glock older sister?
Not an
He
older.
loves his older sister.
Not
Yes,
older. Just drop older and you got it. So when we go from one gender to the other, we don't use older or younger for siblings, right? So a male has Glock, a female has eek. Then a female has shetch and keek, and a male has hunch and keek. So a male does have older male siblings and younger male siblings, and a female has older female siblings and younger female siblings. But then when we go across, it goes Glock, eek.
That double eyelash is tripping me out. How to do a double take.
What is the top one? Eyebrow or something?
I don't know. It just looks like two eyelashes. Halibut style.
I hadn't noticed it before. Yeah, well. Okay. Now, look at this. Chasachan, isachan, asachan, tisachan, yisachan, has asachan, dudzechan. So now we're messing around with this verb in different ways. But yet, still predictable. How would I translate chasachan?
I love it.
Yeah, I love them or I love it. What about isachan?
You
Love you.
love it.
You love them, you love it. What about asachan?
They singular.
They love them or they love it. Tusachan.
We love it.
We love them, we love it. Yisachan.
Y'all love them or it.
Yeah, what? Has asachan.
They all love them or it.
Yeah, what? In this one, it could be they all love them, they all love it, they all love them all, they love them all. It could be any one of those. It's just, you got to figure it out outside of the verb. Any questions about those? Oh.
Wait, what about the dudzechan?
Oh, whoops. I went too fast. Dudzechan. What is dudzechan? You didn't see anything.
People? Is it people love them? It?
Yes. And in this case, with the fourth person, I would translate that one as they are loved. So sometimes you just sort of push the pronoun right out of the English. It just kind of depends. It's valuable. Technically, it is. People cherish it. But if it doesn't, sometimes it just makes sense to not have the people in there. It just depends. Like, wuduwacha, it was eaten. That's how I would translate that. But then there's other times where I might put people in there. It just kind of depends. Any questions about any of these?
Did I hear once that hun is usually only used for people, not for objects?
Yeah. So this isn't for your pizza. This isn't for the lamp. This isn't for. It could be for the dog. I think it could work for a dog. But I don't think it's like I love boating. It doesn't work the same. I don't think in English that works just fine. But in Lingít, I think this is usually attached to living things. It has to do with like being next to them or with them, which there might be things you really do like a special pen or something. But I think in Lingít we would just say like, I really like this pen. Notice the d pushes the classifier plus d. Again, the fourth person pronoun d. The zero group classifier must always be minus d, everything else plus d. You cannot go dude, but you also cannot go duse, dushe, or dushe. It has to be dudze, dudle, dudje. And you're seeing it happen right here. Dudzechan. What happened here? Chatzachan, isachan, asachan, hasachan, yisachan, has asachan, kusachan.
The hut is an object.
Yes. So now we're changing the object pronoun, same verb. So what do we got for khat sekhan?
They love
They
me.
love,
They love me. What about isakhan?
they love you.
They love you. However, grammatically, if there's not anything in between the object and the subject, it is usually impossible to tell whether that goes you to them or them to you. Because isakhan could also be you love them. So again, sometimes we need to do a little bit of work outside of the verb. And those usually it's this second to third person relationship or third to second, or sometimes it's the third person plural. So asakhan is the same. It's still they and them. Oops. What about hasakhan?
They love them. Singular.
But we're got to get the ha in there though.
Oh, are you at asachan or chasachan?
Hasakhan.
Oh, sorry. Okay. They love them. Singular loves plural them. Us.
Yeah, Owen.
Sorry.
No, I messed myself up too because I didn't out of order. I didn't have this one in there. Okay, they love us. Yep. Yisachan.
Redeeming myself. They love you all.
There we go. Okay. And then hasasachan is the same as last time. What about qusachan?
They love people.
They love people. So we've done, for this verb sichan, we just did almost every possible subject combination and object combination. So with that, how would I say, you love me?
Chat isechan.
Chat isachan. How would I say, we all love you all?
Are you
One more time.
how you like
That
we all love you, y'all. I don't know.
you all love us all, which is good, but now we got to flip it the other way around. We all love you all.
Yi ha sechan.
That's doubling up the object, though.
Itusechan.
Yitisachan, yeah, away, yeah, away. So, and we'll start. This is the path we're gonna start walking down. It's like, what about this? What about? And then it'll hit this pattern. And what you'll notice is sometimes I tend to go first person singular, second person singular, third person singular, first person plural, second person plural, third person plural, fourth person. But then other times, because I'm scatterbrained, I go first person singular, first person plural, second person singular, second person plural, third person singular, third person plural, fourth person. So just be warned, it doesn't always follow the same pattern. Maybe I'm just trying to throw you off so you're not memorizing. Just, maybe I've got a plan, but maybe I don't. There you go. There's a negative fourth person perfective verb. Nobody knows. Okay. Let's see. We got 10 minutes left. What do you folks want to... You want to go back to that intro to verbs thing we were doing on...
Hune, could this be a night to show that stem variation?
Yeah, let's take a look at that.
By the way, I love it every time we do use that PowerPoint. I don't know why, but it's helpful to kind of go back and to just...
It's such a good book. Vesta Dominic's just wonderful. And you keep going back in for like different, like you're going back in the same little book for different, and you're looking for different things. So good. Okay. Let's see. Kachansan, do you want to talk about this beautiful chart?
Well, I was hoping you would do that, but so I was trying to find patterns to help me memorize these, and Hune went through it and added some wonderful things. I tried to color code, just knowing that I remember Hune saying, just focus on perfective, imperative, maybe progressive and perfective, I can't remember, and future. So when I was reading about it, it said that as long as you're working with these verb tenses, the stems at the top tend to follow a certain pattern. But if you get into hortative and everything else, then it doesn't always have that pattern. So it was great. I'm like, I'm just going to focus on these verb tenses. And maybe you could talk about the CVH. That's like the decessive, but
yeah. So stem variation is sort of one of the last things we start talking about. Like we kind of hit on it. Like, okay, it's going to be one of these vowels. It'll be this or that. But now it's time to just go for it. And so sometimes with Lingít grammar, I feel like we've been like sitting around talking about going on a boat ride for a long time. And finally we just gotta be like, you know what, we just gotta get in the boat. We just gotta go. So this is one of the final pieces in terms of like putting it all together. So by all, I mean you learn how to build a prefix and then predict what the stem's going to be. And so there's a couple important concepts. The root is the word we use to talk about the meaning. Like gut is to go, nuke is to sit down, right? So they usually have meaning attached to them. The stem variation is saying, what is the vowel going to be? Is it going to be nook, nuke, or nuke? And it is almost always predictable. So what we look at is three factors come into this. One, what is the stem variation of that root? Two, what is the verb mode? Three, what is the conjugation type? So those are, I never put my third finger up. Those are the three things we look at. They work in concert. The overarching pattern is the zero and everything else. That's usually the case. Sometimes it's like everybody's this thing, but a lot of times you have zeros and everything else, right? So what you have is in a verb theme, it's going to mark the stem variation for you. So there's these types. There's open, which is marked with consonant, vowel, vowel. So when you look this up, you'll see like D, A, nothing after it. That just means it is your standard open stem. That means it's going to be these things. Perfective, a zero conjugation is going to be long and high. Na, ga, and qa will be long and low. The letter H pops up there for what we call fading vowel. So this is a fading stem variation. The only difference is when you get repetitive modes, it tends to stay low. Then you have capital C, capital V, capital V, capital C. That means if you looked up the stem, you would see G-O-O-T. It's not marked high tone. That's the important thing for the closed ones. That means it's going to just work in its standard way. This is a standard stem right here. So you're going to have gut, good. This is the whole key between like hit, ooh, gut, hit, day, woo, good. Because that first one was a 0. The others, that second one's a na. Okay.
Hunek, could I just add that, like the color coding, can you scroll down to the future? Yeah, negative. So like I use the color coding of the spaces to mean that it is exactly like the stem label at the top. So now all I have to remember is future in the negative will always look like the label at the top. So anytime you see a cell colored in, it means it's exactly like it is at the top. So anytime I think, oh, future negative, oh, those are the labels at the top. CVV, CV, CVVC, high tone, and then the pinched. So anytime you see one of those cells colored in, it's exactly what the label is at the top. Does that make sense? I don't know if that helps. And then the color red is just a way to say a high tone, just to help delineate it. So
text, right? Not this red cell, right? The red text.
Yes, the red text means high tone, and then the red cell means there's no change in the label above. Or Hune, can you say that more clearly?
Yeah, so if it's colored, so we're trying to go with like this, here's the default form, it's long and low. Something will cause it to change, either going high or going short and high. So those are your sort of 3 options: long, low, long, high, short, high. And so that's what I think this chart is trying to lay out. It's just sort of let us see some of those patterns on what's going to cause it to change. And so those are things, as Tlingit grammar is complicated, but I think the more we sort of examine it and teach it and learn it, it's like, look at it like this, but then sometimes it can be pushed to change. And then that's when you got to start paying attention to some of these things. And we'll start doing a slow walkthrough. So this is sort of like big picture. But then we'll sort of say, let's just learn a perfective. A perfective has very specific patterns, which is every perfective open will be high as a 0, low for everything else. Every perfective closed will be short and high for 0, long and low for everything else. These 2 patterns are pretty much identical. The only thing you need to remember is if it's marked high in the theme, it will not go low. So if you have shot, then you can have shut and shot. Those are your only 2 options. You cannot get a low version of that one. There are times you expect a low version, but you won't get it. Everybody okay?
And like perfective negative, the only cell that changes is that first one. That's why it's in white. All of the others, whether they're naga, ka, or 0, are going to reflect Naaw, what you asked. It's going to reflect, the top of the column. There's going to be no change. That's what I was trying to, and then Hune added the other pieces, the like equals the K, and that part I hadn't even picked up. I was just looking at the long vowel versus high tones and low tones to see if there were any patterns at all. And like even the perfective plus, you'll notice that the 0 in each column or in each stem variation category becomes a short and high. It says only the vowel zeros. I'm sorry. Yeah, only the vowel zero is long. All of the consonant zeros are short, and all of the naqqa have no changes. So that underneath on the first column are supposed to delineate the pattern, and then hopefully the colors help to show that. I don't know. Is it helpful to anyone? You don't have to be nice.
That is amazing.
Good sheesh.
Probably, I was excited to share it, but I don't know if 7:20 was the best time to share it. So now you probably should have said, click.
It's all just posting these days. We're just not even that far in the semester. And earlier today in class, I was like, okay, everybody have a good weekend. I mean, see you in 2 days. And they're like, you said it's too late. No, this is great. This is great.
Yeah, the colors are really, I didn't understand the colors, but now that I do, it's like click. So that's really useful.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in and we are going to learn how to put together a positive perfective. Like all these things are there, but it's sort of like, okay, let's start with this single row so that one, you're going to be able to spot a perfective, and then you're going to be able to look at a verb and look at the theme alone. And then you should be able to put that into perfective for any given person. I did, you did, they did, we did, y'all did, they all did, people did. And you're going to be able to do that. It happened. So like we're going to take a whole series of verbs. So what this thing is going to look like, I'll give you the 1 minute preview. So we have that. I'll put the link to this Google Doc up that Gach-An-san made. And we're going to start moving into things like this. So step one is sort of like looking at objects and subjects, which we've been doing with loving, all this loving that's going on. But then we're going to start looking at how these things work in terms of what a perfective verb looks like, how stem variation works, how the prefix works. And like a lot of it, I think it doesn't fully make sense. But then what we do is we start going through a whole mess of examples. Like just look at them, find the patterns. Your brain will find the patterns. You will be able to predict the patterns and get yourself fully. This is the launching point to get off of the books. And you got to reach sort of like a high velocity to get there, but we'll all get there. So then we'll look at a whole bunch of examples with every single classifier combination. Every classifier person combination. Then we'll look at a whole other set of verbs and you will predict the verb. You will put it together based on this information and you'll learn how to put a perfective together. So that's the next step I think we should take. But it's going to have to be next week because tomorrow's a super class, no class on Thursday. So hang in there. It does get thick. But then we'll also just keep going back to the words of the masters, like Kitchnach and these wonderful things that they said and that we are doing our best to try and do. We're not going to need our books to talk. That's where we're headed. Be like, oh yeah, I got to go look up that verb, but I don't have to look up how to use it because I could do that. And we're getting there. Good enough, cheesh. Anything else before we go?
What does the superscript H designate?
A fading vowel. So open stems, when you put a repetitive suffix on there, they tend to go high. And that just says it'll stay low. And the reason why it's the letter H and the reason why we call it fading, because like for example, like say you had T, T-E-E. Old time original Lingít, which is Tanta dialect, they would say T. and there'd be this H on the end. You would hear it. For northern Tlingit, southern Tlingit, inland Tlingit, that H fell off. But it would be their T. It would be a breath that came out at the end. That's why it would stay low, because you would still have to get to that H, which is wild. But the only thing that affects is those repetitive ones. Okay. Ganachchi Shuhan, Yakecha. Yewishkach Tusin, Sekanen.
Sheesh.
Sheesh.
I'm gonna sheesh.
Wind up hiring Brian Dable, who most recently had been an assistant in Buffalo. Here's where it gets